Trevs Hockey Show on the Trev. It's too sweet. Anyway, it's a treat seeing you during the day. Now you're probably used to late night uploads and all that stuff, but I'm lucky enough to be able to do this during the day. Anyway, Flyers fans, your day is here. You've only been waiting for it for how long, but let me know what you think either way. Today officially ends the 4+ year reign of Chuck Fletcher as your general manager in Philly. He's finally relieved of it today. Let's talk about it. So, Fletcher's 4-and-a-bit-year career with the Flyers began on December 3rd, 2018, after he was named the 8th general manager in team history after the Flyers had, ironically, released Ron Hextall. Funny how we find ourselves in the same spot. I know GMs are hired to be fired, but that's a different argument for a different day. Under Fletcher as GM, the Flyers have a record of 141 wins, 145 losses, and 48 overtime/shootout losses. Flyers only made the playoffs one time under Fletcher, that being the 2019-20 playoffs, and if the 19-20 season didn't play out the way it did, they would have still made the playoffs based on statistics alone. So 19-20 was definitely their best season under him as far as being a competitive team when they finished second in the Metro Division. And as for this season, the Flyers are definitely not making the playoffs, currently sitting 7th in the same division, having been unofficially eliminated from the playoffs weeks ago. Again, if you follow my 10-point theory, they've been out for a very long time. Now, trade-wise, as far as this season's concerned, aside from trading for Brendan Lemieux, the Flyers made no real movement at the trade deadline, despite, the rumors saying they were moving James Van Riemsdyk or Kevin Hayes. It's very strong rumors saying they were going. They never went. And there was really nothing done at the trade deadline this year. Prior to the season beginning, you got to remember he also traded 3 draft picks for Tony DeAngelo from Carolina. Think of that what you will. We'll see how the draft picks do, right? Overall, in his history with the team, as far as trades is concerned anyways, he did bring in Owen Tippett at the expense of Claude Giroux, and that was in 2022. He also brought in Cam Atkinson for Jacob Voracek in 2021. But ultimately, the way I'll remember Chuck Fletcher in Philly when it came to trading was for the ones that haven't panned out to this very day, like bringing in Ryan Ellis from Nashville in 2021. I mean, sure, it took care of how to handle Nolan Patrick, but since that trade, Ellis has only played 4 games for the team, sitting out the majority of last season, and so far all of this season with an injury, despite having 4 years left on that contract. Oh, and he did also trade Wade Simmons. And as far as free agency is concerned, all I can think of is Martin Jones and Keith Yandel as maybe 2 of the more notable names Fletcher managed to convince to sign in Philadelphia, even though they were for 1-year deals. But other than that, no real significant improvement was made in the 4 years that he was there. And as far as drafting is concerned, in the 4 drafts he represented the Flyers, the only real name that's seen any real NHL time has been Cam York. But other than that, none of his first-round picks have managed to be full-time Flyers on a consistent basis. I mean, yeah, there's Cutter Gauthier, but he's in university right now. He hasn't seen the Flyers lineup yet. So really, I mean, if you're going to run a team and not make any significant improvements to improve the team or anything that can make your team better for the last 2 years, other than trading picks, it will catch up to you. And in this case, for Chuck Fletcher, it finally did. Despite the many claims of being competitive, quote unquote, the Flyers have been nowhere near post-1920. Is that really a reflection on the GM? Well, yeah, 100%. He hasn't done anything. But maybe it was just time for that culture shakeup. It had to happen at some point, right? Under Fletcher, the Flyers went through 5 head coaches in those 4+ years, 2 of which were interms, but the list does include Dave Haxtell, Scott Gordon, who was on an interim basis, Alain Vigneault, Mike Yeo on an interim basis, and John Tortorella being the last coach he brought in. So I'll give you my opinion on this whole thing after we talk about his interim replacement. So the Flyers are naming Daniel Briere as his interim replacement. Now, Briere is not new to the organization or to the talk of replacing Fletcher, as Briere has been assistant to the general manager for the better part of the year, as well as having played for the Flyers from 2007 to 2013. And Briere does come with some general manager experience, being the general manager for the Maine Mariners of the ECHL from 2017 to 2021. So his first real NHL general manager position. Seems to be a neat little theme going on with GMs, bringing in all the former players for their first GM roles. So hopefully this bodes well for the Flyers, at least better than how it's panned out for the last 2+ years. So again, what's my opinion on all this thing? I'll gladly give it to you. So first, I'm just going to reiterate this. I'm not a Flyers fan. I haven't been for a very long time. I don't even think I ever was a Flyers fan at any point. But when you've seen and heard this for the last couple of years, and especially very strongly in the last 2, you have to know that the change is coming at some point, and it finally did. As somebody who watches Flyers fans suffer through him, it probably came a little too late, but it came nonetheless. And it should have, when you're only doing the bare minimum to get your team by, either to match the cap floor or to at least put a team out. Results usually involve being competitive and doing things to improve your roster, not just get by on the status quo. And that's what it felt like under Fletcher with the Flyers, is very status quo. No improvements. The long-term plan was always get better, get younger, get faster, but didn't even do that, really. I mean, the Flyers, at least as far as the fans are concerned, they need a GM better than what Fletcher was. And that's just my own outside opinion. I'm sure many Flyers fans will agree that they need better. As a team that has a history of being competitive, to not be competitive for the last 3 years, it's got to suck. But hopefully, whoever they decide to go with as GM, past Briere, I imagine they'll at least put him in serious consideration to be the next GM. But until that day, for now, it's the Briere team. And Fletcher's gone. Hope you're happy, Flyers fans. So let me know your thoughts on the big news out of Philly today. Another one of Chess Hockey Shows. Oh, thank you for tuning in. Don't think I don't appreciate the gesture, especially if you're right here. That's a great thing. So, but if you are here, if you made it to this point, you want to say hi, you appreciate what I'm doing, there's a like button over there. I think I've earned that. That red button that says subscribe all over it, if you haven't done so by now, please consider. It'll make you feel good. And we're really pushing for the 250 mark by the end of the year. So there's that. And that social that I never use, it's in the description down below. So moving forward. Well, this is our second GM move of the year. We almost have as many GM moves as we have coaches. And I mean, that's kind of been a thing that hasn't really happened this season. But I imagine that'll change at the end of the season. But either way, in the meantime, in between time, be looking for more videos from Trev. Later.